Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Dorma. This is their part number CL753D LCE 626. So that part number means a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to go over what that part number means. We'll do a visual review of the item. We'll take a look at the contents of the box. We're going to go over the product brochure, the installation instructions, the template. And let's get started with just taking a peek inside the box to see what is all in here. So as soon as we open it up, this is what we're going to see. Packaging, that's actually nice that they do a good job at isolating the material so it doesn't, roll around. Okay, in no particular order. Probably the business end first. And this is a triple function type of lock. This is a push turn button. Well, we'll just get it all taken out. Okay, so we've got the exterior assembly, the chassis as well. Seems like a very robust lock. Dorma is a name. Dorma is a name that's synonymous with many things. This just happens to be, of course, a cylindrical lock by them. And this cylindrical lock, is their typical grade 2. Grade 2 means that it is a 500,000 cycles. Who knows what this lock would actually, work until a cycle count. There's nothing to say this lock wouldn't work for 2 million cycles or longer, but it's guaranteed to be a 500,000 cycle use, and this would be appropriate. A grade 2 lock would be appropriate for, it's called either heavy duty residential or light duty commercial, standard duty commercial, or if you have applications where you have heavy duty commercial and you have doors that are very infrequently used, you're going to not use a grade 1 lock. If you've got a class 1 office building, you're going to put grade 1 in a lot of places, but closet doors inside of offices, grade 2, would be my, not only would be my suggestion, but I think it would be the industry suggestion as to what would be proper and best practice to use in such an application. Okay. Then we're going to go over what I said earlier about it being a triple function. This is an entrance function is what it is, but it operates in 3 ways. So we'll put this aside. That lever, we're going to decide what they're going to call this, and we're going to define that. Okay. This is in the 626 finish, by the way. Working our way, I suppose, through the lock, you're going to have your inside mounting plate. You're going to have your rows. Put all that aside. Working our way through the lock as well. The inside lever. Okay. Latch bolt. This is a 2 3/4 deadlocking latch bolt. The face of that's going to have its UL, which means it's approved for use on fire-rated doors. It has a capital letter F. And that means that there's uppercase and lowercase f. One means positive pressure, the other means neutral pressure. I believe uppercase means positive pressure. Regardless, you can, let's take a look. I did need a moment to look that up. I had forgotten the uppercase is positive pressure compliant. And lowercase f would be neutral pressure compliant. Anyway, that's a 2 3/4 latch bolt. That's going to be 1 1/8 by 2 1/4. Okay. Now the latch throw on this is going to be 1/2 inch. And when you're looking at the label on a fire door, it'll say min or minimum latch throw, and you just need to be sure that the hardware you're using observes the requirements of that label. Sometimes they say 3/4 latch throw, and that sometimes can really throw a curveball into the mix, and you'll see that in pairs of doors, and at which point you've got to make sure that the lock you have supplied is available with a 3/4 latch. Not every lock is available with that. We'll put that aside. The keys are here. We're going to talk more about the keys. That's that Dorma bow that's there. This is a 6-pin, clearly a Schlage C keyway. Classic C keyway. Dorma has their own. Dorma has a lot of information regarding keyways. 4 7/8 strike. This is going to be for use in hollow metal frames. 4 7/8. The overall width, about an inch and, what is that? About an inch and 13/16. However, that's not how they're measured. The center of the screw hole to the edge of the lip is how strikes are measured, and this is about an inch and 3/16, inch and a quarter, and that's standard. The lip length needs to be taken into consideration when you are specifying doors and frames. You might have unusual conditions that will require a modification to the lip length, but by and large, inch and a quarter, when you take it out of the box of any lock, it's going to be pretty much what it is. And it's because it meets most conditions. This is a funny tool. This is a... I'm not exactly sure where this tool comes into play. We're going to, it looks like a release tool. We're going to discover what this tool is for. We're going to have our push pin. We're going to have 2 screws for the latch, 2 screws for the strike. We're going to have 2 screws for the lock body itself. Looks very simple and straightforward. This pin is going to be really important. A template, a set of installation instructions. Let's switch to the screen view so we can jump into the product catalog and talk about the CL700 series in an overall sense. All right, so this is the item that we're looking at online. Not a whole lot to see here, but when we click on the link to the manufacturer's page, we're going to be able to get over to the product catalog. Pardon me. By the time you're seeing this video, there will be links below here to product catalog, installation instructions, and templates. So let's start off with the product catalog and do an overview. So Dorma's pretty logical in the way they do things. Cylindrical lever, cylindrical knob. 700 happens to be grade 2. Okay. LC, this is an LCE, so we're looking at an LC lever. They do have more than just the LC. I suppose all they're doing there is just showing you some quick options in that cover page. So, a summary. Lots of available functions. 1/2-inch latch throw. Strikes. You can get different strikes. So, regarding the overview, it's a premium built lock with a high-performance chassis. Now, here they state... or grade 1 products are required. This is definitely a grade 2 lock, is the bottom line. I'm going to think that is a typo, is what's happening on that. To meet aesthetic needs of your project, versatile locks available in a wide range of trim. Moving past the bluster, which you can read all of this material. Grade 2, handicap compliant, positive pressure, and that's what that capital letter F meant. So I would have known it had I just got to this part. Capital letter F means positive pressure. You can do key work, obviously. Finishes, polished brass, satin bronze, satin nickel, polished chrome, stainless steel, and satin chrome, and oil rubbed, and satin brass. Okay, so they show an overview of what the lock looks like when it's kind of disassembled. This entire chassis, there's not going to be anything you have to worry about inside of here, although there probably certainly are subcomponents of that are available. If you needed to service the lock, we'd probably be able to potentially get our hands on some parts, but you might be obligated to buy the entire chassis dependent on the key system, the type of cylinder that's in it, I mean to say, and the function. But what Dorma does really great with everything that they do is they basically say, hey, listen, this is how you need to order it. This is all of the possibilities. And they do a great job at this. You know, I rely on this type of matrix from every manufacturer that I work with. And I can tell you that Dorma is absolutely, you know, top notch in my opinion when it comes to just getting the information laid out. You know, CL or CK, fine. It's a 7 series, which means a 700 series, which means it's a grade 2. And then your function, and then your cylinder type. We're doing a D type here, which is a conventional cylinder in an LC. LC? What are we doing? LC is what we're doing. Now we have an E behind there. Now what's interesting is in their price list, they indicate the E rose, and putting my tape measure on this rose, this is definitely neither 3 7/16 or 3-inch. I mean, the outside of this rose is actually closer to 3 9/16. So, you know, is the price list possibly a typo, and this is really a 3 7/16 LCE? Yeah, very likely. But in their price book, they have an E rose. And I have indeed discovered what the problem is. It's a typo in that catalog. It is supposed to be an E rose, not a C rose. That's got to be the typo. Finishes are listed here. Whether or not you want security screws, then you need to specify your latch bolt, your door thickness, your strike, and your lip length. We talked about that earlier. 1 in 13/16. Well, that would be a 13/16 lip length. That would be a very short lip. But the good thing is, as you scroll through the catalog, you're going to be able to see all of the options that they're discussing, generally in order. They do have their own page when it comes to keyways, okay, and how to key them. We're doing a conventional cylinder, a D. A D is in the part number. They don't list what is standard, but that Schlage C is going to be considered standard. But you can see where you can specify other keyways. And if you get into some of these other legacy keyways, the Corbins, the Sargents, the Yales, you know, it'll come out O-bitted. You can do interchangeable core as well. You can do this, and this is all referred to as small format. Okay, best small format core. Here are your trim options: LR, LC, LG, KB. LR is, of course, you know, the world's most common lever for commercial applications. We're doing the curved one that comes back on us here. Okay, if you're doing a CK, you'll have a single knob. Now your functions. We're doing a 53 function here, and that is the ANSI number, the F09. So if you are looking at specifications and they give you an ANSI number, that's what you're looking up. You know, you may not know it's an entry function, but you know it's an F09. So you can find an F09 by any manufacturer who makes locks that are ANSI listed, and then you'll find that, you know, if it's F09 by any manufacturer, then it's the same function. So this lock, and this is called the operational description here, describes how it works. And we'll go over that when we switch back to the camera view and talk about the lock. But it can act as a passage, it can act as an office function, and it can act as a storeroom function. And when you combine those three together, it will become an entry function, is what it is. Passage is if you turn that button and you just make the exterior lever active all times. Or you can just push the button. Then it becomes an office, meaning that when you rotate the inside lever, the button will pop out, rendering it a passage. Or you can push and turn the button, then the outside lever will always stay fixed or rigid, and you always need a key to come in. Okay. Now they talked about your latch bolt options that are here. And you'll notice that they list the throw, and there are no 3/4 inch throw on this grade 2 lever lock, so be mindful of that. You know, do you bump into it often? No. If you are in commercial hardware, you'll bump into it eventually. Back sets 2 3/8, 2 3/4. They can do a 3 3/4, which I don't bump into often, but occasionally you do. Someone does order 3 3/4 back set latch bolts, different faceplate widths, etc. They show you the function that's these locks are going to be compatible with. A passage or a privacy will have a spring latch and not a dead latch. So anything that has a keyed function over here is going to be a dead latch. Get into the different strikes that are available. Okay, 1 1/4 is the lip length of the standard. Oh, pardon me, 1 3/16 is the lip length. That 1 1/4 is actually this dimension right here. Okay, so if when they're saying 1 3/16 earlier, what that meant was not 13/16. What that meant was 1 3/16. That's what that meant. T strike, D strike, or full lip. Those strikes are optional. And that's it. That talks about the grade 2 lever lock from them overall. So let's continue this. Let's pick this up with looking at the installation instructions now. And let's continue that. As we continue on with the video review, let's review the installation instructions. And installation instructions, you know, ought to always include a summary of the parts and then also define what those parts are called, because they'll refer to those, you know, that naming convention later on during in the installation instructions. So as you can see, it's an extremely simple layout of lock set. You know, just extremely simple. There are less fasteners involved in getting this grade 2 lock installed. And features obviously a through bolt hole application, and they're getting it really to do the through bolt to do the duty of not only getting the inside mounting plate installed to the door, but those bolts are going to run right through those holes into those through bolts. Okay, so probably the terms to really be familiar with is probably just part 6, inside rose mounting plate. Everything else is pretty, you know, obvious and straightforward. In terms of doing the preparation to the door, that would be coming from the template, which we'll touch on after the installation instruction portion. Your door will be prepped. The first thing, once your door is prepped, or assuming your door is prepped, the first thing you need to do always is get the latch bolt installed. And what I like to do is, you know, obviously pre-drill the holes for the screws. And then I like to simply make sure that the latch works freely within the preparation. Depress that a couple of times. Okay, and once you've got the latch installed, come over to step 2. And, you know, this is actually very important, because you don't often, I don't ever really see this reference to the location of the center line of the latch to the chassis. And I think contributes to malfunctioning locks when people install a lock and they've not adjusted it or confirmed it's adjusted for the proper door thickness. What's nice about this set of installation instructions is they clearly state, we've manufactured this, we've assembled this for an 1 3/4 thick door. Okay, the product catalog must, and I forgot already what we said, if at all, what thickness of door it will work on. Yeah, right here. So 1 3/8 to 1 3/4. Okay, door thickness range. I have certainly seen locks, and I've been called about locks where the latch bolt has literally left the chassis because it's just not installed properly. You've got, you know, the center line of the retracting hub is not the center line of where the latch bolt is installed on the door. Whether it's, you know, installed in the exact center of the door or it's been extended, unequally. If you had a 3-inch thick door, you could put that latch in the center, or you can put it biased to the exterior or to the interior. It just has to be on a center line is what I'm driving at. So let's see here now. So what they're saying here is slightly separate the through bolt retainer from the outside rose, and then rotate the outside rose assembly to adjust for proper door thickness. Realign the through bolt retainer with the outside rose. So I'm going to demonstrate that. It's simple once you know how it works. You just grab the 2 through bolt posts and you pull that entire plate in this direction, and then you can rotate. You can turn the outside rose assembly, because that's all threaded. It's all threaded underneath there. You can't see the threads. And moving through into the installation, once we have the door thickness adjusted, and it's most likely 1 3/4, obviously, but it could be 1 3/8. Install the chassis. That's really easy. Your latch bolt's already in. Your chassis is going to go in, and you simply need to make the feature of the latch bolt made up to the retracting hub. This is the retracting hub, this portion here. They have to mate exactly that way. These tabs, or these ears on the latch bolt, need to nestle along the outside of the chassis as well. Okay. Okay, so that is what that spanner wrench is for. I was not, jumping ahead, I was not familiar with the inside rose assembly, and I didn't, I haven't seen this is obviously a spanner wrench. It will rotate something around a radial axis. Install inside mounting plate, so that's going to be easy. Your entire chassis is threaded, so you're going to spin your rose on. Be careful. Don't force it. Don't cross thread it. And then use that included spanner wrench, and tighten it. Don't over tighten it though. There's no reason to do that. At this point, you'll want to test the operation of the door. Rotate the outside lever. Make sure that the function of the latch bolt is smooth. It retracts fully, and it returns to its original state completely without any sort of complication. What I'm saying is, if you over tighten this, the lock is not going to work correctly. Install the rose. Well, that's easy. You're just going to push that rose onto the inside rose mounting plate, and then obviously your inside lever comes on. Be sure the lever insert is inserted into the inside lever prior to installation. So what they're saying here is there is a lever insert, and on your lever it is already installed. This is number 9 is the lever insert. Make sure it's inside of here before you install the lever. So it's a required part, is the bottom line. Speaking of required parts, this lock is certainly listed for use on fire-rated doors. Okay. And as a result, any portion of the lock, any piece of the included lock that is not installed does render the entire opening no longer fire-rated. And the reason I say that is, the trick question is, if you have a door closer and the plastic cover is not installed on your fire-rated door, do you still have a fire-rated door assembly? Well, the answer is possibly. The question is the installation of the plastic cover called out in the installation instructions? And if it is, then the answer is no, you don't have a fire-rated door anymore, and you have to have that cover because the installation instructions call out for that cover to be there. Okay, just a little fun fact. Who needs to know that? Engineers of hospitals. Regular, routine, annual inspections of fire-rated doors, quite mandatory within the work that they do. And having something installed that way is having something installed within accordance of the original installation instructions is obviously required. Step 5 will be getting your strike plate installed. That's easy stuff. So they have installation instructions here on timing of a classroom function. Timing, we're doing an entry function, so we don't have to worry about that. But if you have a classroom function, install lock on door, remove outside lever and cylinder for interchangeable core locks, leave levers in place, and remove cores and tail pieces. Okay. Rotate key spindle fully counterclockwise, install cylinder and lever. Okay, so what they're saying here is, if you get a classroom, a 70 function, it would be CL770, right? So let's look at this CL770. CL770, that's a classroom lock. Okay, what that means is deadlocking latch operated by trim either side, except when outside trim is locked by key from outside. When outside trim is locked, latch bolt is operated by key in outside trim. When outside trim locked, latch bolt operated by inside trim. Okay, probably could have been a little bit more elegant way to state that, but you know, inside trim always free. Free egress via inside trim, that kind of thing. But what they don't tell you here is the key spindle. They want you to rotate that completely counterclockwise until it stops, and it needs to look like a plus sign. If you can then rotate it completely clockwise, okay, and you'll find that it goes 360 degrees. That's the way that these work. The point is if I were to take the key spindle and turn it 180 degrees and then install my lever, the function of the lock on a classroom won't work correctly because the key spindle is not timed correctly, and that's why they call it timing instructions. So be mindful to rotate that completely counterclockwise 360 degrees, then install it. And your lock will either be locked or unlocked at that point. But to reverse the operation, spin your key 360 degrees in the opposite direction, remove the key, and now you have rendered opposite the function. And that's just how that works. Removing the outside lever of removing and reassembling interchangeable core lever. I don't see a reason to ever have to remove the lever from the outside. I mean, if you're going to replace the lever, like if it's damaged and you can get your hands on a lever trim, you might replace it. But with interchangeable core, because you can adjust the door thickness without disassembling the exterior, I don't think there's too much need to remove the lever, in my estimation. Removing and reassembling standard cylinder. This entire step we're going to go over on camera, just to show you how to remove it from the door. But the bottom line is you're going to insert your key. They're saying turn it 45 degrees, and I'll show you why you have to do that. Then you're going to insert your pin removal tool into what they call the pick hole that's here, and then you'll be able to pull off the entire assembly. Okay, and that entire assembly comprises of the outside lever, the cylinder, and the lever insert. Again, you need that. It keeps the cylinder in place when the lever is put back down onto the stem. Dummy installation, should you have an 01 single dummy. I don't know that they do full dummies. I don't see a full dummy at all. So if you need a dummy on both sides, you'd order 2 single dummies. And that really concludes all of the installation instructions in terms of showing it on screen. Let's switch to the camera view and then go over those steps in terms of door thickness adjustment and then removing the outside trim. Now, as we look at the lock and talk about adjusting thickness, you can see that the chassis is threaded, and all you need to do is pull that plate out of the way because it locks into the outside rows. But once you have it pulled away, you can, when it's seated, when it's seated, trying to get my hands out of the way, you can't turn it. This rose will not turn. When you pull that away, you can then thread that. Okay, and then you'll adjust it for your door thickness. Again, the center of the retracting hub needs to be the center of your door thickness. Your latch bolt needs to be prepped in the center of the door thickness as well, and then you're in good shape. So, door adjustment's pretty simple on this lock. You don't need to pull anything off. You don't need to, put yourself in a position where you're getting super curious unintentionally about the lock. So we're going to go over removing that outside lever as well. It does come with that push pin tool. Okay. And as they said earlier, the key has to go in, turn it clockwise 45 degrees. You can, turn it as far as it'll go if you want. It doesn't matter, but at least 45 degrees. And I'm just turning the key and I'm holding it turned. I wouldn't normally take a lever off this way, but trying to demonstrate it on camera. There's a spring-loaded tab in there, and as I depressed the tab, I used my finger, my index finger, and my thumb to pull that off. Okay, so the question becomes, why do you have to turn it 45 degrees? Well, that's the spindle that they talked about earlier inside of there. Okay. Now that spring-loaded tab is here. And when you push on that, it moves that entire apparatus back. That's what you're accessing when you push the pin into the little hole. The reason you have to... Here's our retaining clip. When I push it in, it'll move. When the tailpiece is in place, it won't move. You turn the key 45 degrees... Now it has enough room to be depressed to clear the inside preparation on the inside of that lever. That's why you need a key to open. That's why you need a key to remove the outside trim. Now, not every lock in the world works that way, but certainly all commercial locks will work that way. You can't just pop the lever off and then manipulate it with a tool to get in. You have to have the key to get it in, or that cylinder at least has to be in the open position in order to get in. So why you would remove this? Obviously, if you're going to repin the cylinder, change the cylinder completely, that cylinder retainer, it's in there pretty good. Push that out. That's how that's supposed to look. So when you reassemble it, let's say that you're going to... Okay. If you reassemble this, couple of things, if you repin this, you notice how that tailpiece is vertical? If you have any experience with cylinders, you can think in your head when you've repinned a knob lock, well, that tailpiece is always horizontal. It's supposed to be horizontal on locks. That's how they work. But the reason that they are vertical on lever locks is because your cylinder doesn't go in this way. It goes in this way, rendering it horizontal. The reason I say that is because this tailpiece can be installed two different ways. So be mindful when you put that back together, make it vertical. If it's horizontal, your lock's just not going to behave the way that you want it to behave, depending on the function. It actually might work just fine in this lock. I don't know. Just put it back vertical, and there's no reason to discover whether or not it will work opposite the way that it's been shown to be installed. Reassembling it, drop your cylinder back into the lever. Make sure your face is seated, your cylinder plug face. Bring your lever insert. There's really only one way for this to go in. Depress it down so that it's flush. At this point, I will install my keys. And I will bring my chassis, my hole for the lever, and my tab need to be in alignment. And I will bring that all together, jiggling it a little bit. When I have that installed, I can rotate the key and it will retract the latch. Again, you need to rotate the key for that clip to be able to find room to move in to allow the lever to come on. I did that a little bit quick. Okay, all of that gets installed. Rotate it, and all I'm doing now is pushing. I'm just pushing. I'm going to take the key out, and I'm going to tug on that. I'm going to make sure that it's seated correctly. Now, we talked about that triple function. Right now, this is operating as a passage. The outside is unlocked. The outside is unlocked. The inside is unlocked. When I take that button and I push it in, now it's an office function, meaning you've gone inside the room, you've closed the door, you've just pushed the button in. The outside is rigid, the inside is locked, and once you turn it, it pops the button back out, rendering this now a passage again. That's a 50 function, or an office function. Now if you want it to stay always locked, push turn, lever is rigid, inside lever is always free, button is not popping out. That's like a storeroom lock, okay? Or, you know, and when you combine those three functions, passage, office, and storeroom into three, it becomes an entry function. And that's what we have here. So we've discussed that. I want to go through the rest of the screw pack. We've got our push pin. You need that for installation. We'll throw our 2 keys into that bag as well. You have 2 screws for the ASA strike, 1224 flat undercut head with combination machine wood threads. Okay. We have 2 screws for the latch bolt. Okay. Now they have 2 more screws in here, which are the same screws for the latch bolt, that you won't need, but I imagine that they put them in that bag in case you opt to use the T-strike or the D-strike, which you would need those smaller screws. That's probably why they're there. So you're going to be left with a couple screws left over. These are the screws that put the lock together. Obviously, you bring your, when you're installing the material, that's already in the door. Like I said, don't cross-thread it. You'll get that threaded down. Then, of course, your spanner tool, as they showed earlier. Okay. That's how that's going to work. I would think that this tool is used in other locks as well. I don't know what else the spanner wrench will work in. You're probably going to want to hang on to that spanner wrench. You know, put it in your toolbox. Okay? And I would, in fact, suggest that you save all of them. If you do a job and you've got 20 locks, save them all. The reasoning is someday they'll discontinue this lock, and all of a sudden people don't have spanner wrenches. So those 2 screws will go through your inside plate and obviously into your through bolts. This is not convertible. You can't install this lock without the through bolts, meaning there's no way to install the lock without the through bolts because there'd be nowhere else to run screws to. Even if you were to cut those off, there's nowhere to do that at. Okay, so we've got the aspect of the lock installation covered, and adjusting the door thickness, removing the lever. We talked about how to put it back together. I showed you what the spanner wrench is for. The next thing to do is to take a stare at the template, and we'll just talk quickly about any nuances about that. Before we jump to back to the screen view, note how this plate floats. That's called a floating faceplate, and that's by design. That means this will accommodate doors that are either square edge or beveled edge. Okay, floating faceplate design is standard. Looking at the template before we switch back, yeah, I don't see anything that needs to be pointed out on camera. Let's switch back to the screen view where we can study that template a little bit closer. So as we look at the template, we're going to have the wood door template that's here, and what they're showing us is something very important when it comes to backset. Backset to center line of door thickness. What they're saying is the center line of the thickness of the door is where backset is measured from. And what I'm driving at there is if you are doing a door that is square edged or a door that is beveled edge, it really matters where you measure your 2 3/4 from. Okay? This and this would be wrong because it's from the center line of the thickness is where you measure it. The point I bring it up is when you mark your hole 2 3/4 on a beveled edge door, it will be too shallow if you measure from the pull side of the door, and it'll be too far over if you measure from the push side. So it's defined as 1/8 inch over 2 inch. 1/8 and 2 is what it's called. For every 2 inch in door thickness, that bevel is 1/8 of an inch. It's also known as 3 degree. It's a 3 degree bevel. So be mindful that that's how backset is determined. Now with a square edge door, it's pretty easy. There's nothing to really worry about. But you do have to adjust because of how it's referenced from the center line. Okay, you'll drill a couple of holes at 12 and 6, a 5/16 hole, 1 3/8 from center line up and down. There are certainly drill fixtures for doing that. And after looking in the Dorma catalog, I don't see where they actually offer a drill fixture, but I believe the Schlage M204-198 is going to work just fine. I find that these are really, you know, for the cost of the tool, it's really a no-brainer to have that sort of tool. And what I'm driving at is if we pull up a Schlage, like an AL series lock prep in the master template index, which I'm trying to do, here we go, to ensure that it's the right size. Here we go. You'll indeed see that it is 1 3/8 up and down, 5/16 hole. So that tool is really a great, inexpensive way to drill those accurately. Okay, so be mindful that works out really well. I've used these, you know, I've warped the record. I played it so much, if you follow my meaning. So an inexpensive tool for drilling that, you'll have to drill those. Your latch preparation, 1 1/8 by 2 1/4, 5/30 seconds deep. This is all for a wood door, you know. And if you're going to do a wood door, here's what you do: you drill a 2 1/8 inch hole at the proper backset. You then drill a 1 inch hole from the edge of the door through to your crossbore. You're going to prep your 2 1/4 by 1 1/8, 5/30 second with your template and a router. You'll square the corners. You'll drill your 2 holes at 12 and 6, 5/16. You're done. You drill these holes halfway from each side of the door. And it's simple. That's just how it works. Now, one interesting thing that the Dorma lock does not have, which I've just noticed, is normally on metal doors you're going to see a semicircle at 3 and 9 o'clock. Neither of their plates feature those prongs that will bite into the face of a wood door or will nestle inside of those small little holes, which is why they don't show that drawn here, because it's not required. I think their logic is, why would you need such a thing when you have lever through bolt posts? And I very much agree. You know, those prongs you would find on knob locks and lever locks as well. But I would agree that it's just not necessary when you have those through bolt holes. And if you're taking a hollow metal door and prepping that hole yourself, it will save you the trouble of not needing to make that preparation. Okay, so the metal door, you know, prep is, you know, obviously if you're going to prep a steel door for this lock, you're going to use a hole saw, you're going to use a die grinder, etc., or however you will end up doing that. You'll need mounting tabs, and we can certainly sell you mounting tabs. You know, Adams Wright has mounting tabs that you can use. They're made of steel so that you could actually mount them. You could weld those to the door. These would ultimately work, but we can sell you reinforcing tabs. You know, for this type of work. You know, want to put a lock edge in, reinforcing tabs are also available, you know, for giving you that preparation. So very simple and straightforward sort of work. And let's conclude this video by switching back to the camera view and wrapping it up. Actually, before we do that, I would like to call your attention to the link to the manufacturer's page here, and you will then pull up this page, and it's on this page where you will be able to review all things Dorma related that we sell. These pocket pivots, just because we're here, that's also known as a Harmon hinge. We stock those. Every once in a while, someone's going to order a Harmon hinge, and you'll really see those in hospitals mostly, but not exclusively. The manufacturer's page also is going to allow you to pull up not only the manufacturer's full line catalog, as well as a link to their website, and then several other encyclopedic documents that you can see here. Now let's finish up this video. All right, so now in conclusion, we have the CL700 and a 53 function Dorma lock. I wouldn't hesitate to suggest that you use this lock. I'm a fan of Dorma, but it's for reasons beyond the fact that the quality of the material is good. It's a name that's quite synonymous with good quality commercial builder's hardware. The name Dorma certainly is one that is associated with a tremendous quantity of additional companies. So Dorma's related with Kaba and all of those derivatives of Kaba. Dorma is related with Stanley, Best and Precision. Stanley hinges, obviously. Best lock sets, obviously. Precision exit devices as well. Yes, it's a good quality lock. An objective reason in addition to that that you might consider the Dorma line is because I find that their technical support is always exceptionally on point. There's a particular gentleman there who just does a really phenomenal job at assisting with technical support questions every single time. And it's important because, there are times when you need an answer to a question that's just simply not referenced in the catalog. And it does seem that is not an unusual sort of call that you have to make. And again, Dorma does a really good job with supporting their clients in that regard when you just need technical support. So I would consider them for that. The strong suits of Dorma that I find in terms of the Dorma mechanical hardware line, a lot of people like their 9300 series exit devices. I've supplied that material, who the ultimate user was a military base. So their exit devices are good. Obviously, door closers. Dorma has an extensive line of not only door closers. You can get door closers from anyone. But what Dorma has that perhaps not everyone can make the same claim to is that they have a tremendous quantity of solutions when it comes to applications. Pocket door applications. They have, obviously double egress, deep reveal, and a variety of surface closers, overhead concealed, and floor closers as well. So an incredibly complete offering of closers in all regards. And then their lock sets. Not only their cylindrical material, but of course their mortise locks as well. You'll be able to review that catalog, and I would suggest that you do so. If you have any questions on the Dorma, they're CL753 in an LCE and a 626 in a D configuration keyway. And then as we talked earlier, that latch and that strike need to be, it needs to be specified, so the factory knows what you want. You don't want them to assume what you want, because, they have a standard, but, it needs to be specified, so be sure to do so in every instance. And if you need help, feel free to reach out to us. And thank you very much.